Argos.
Yeah, this is Argos right here. Yep.
All right. So we got a golden doodle, 65 pounds. And essentially it just looks like obedience and some minor behavior stuff.
Yeah, he's a very sweet dog. We have no concerns about him being aggressive. It's really just he just gets so impulsively excited, and maybe just his age. I'm not sure. We've got, so there's, I think I put down there three things. Um, he has a when he's excited to see people that he kind of knows. There are two people um, who he's seen pretty regularly. One are my parents. He's stayed over there a couple times. And like my mom was here the other day, and he could not contain himself with excitement, jumping on her, just like totally inappropriate stuff we do not want to have happen. And then there's another dog, or another, actually his litter mates owners. So my wife and their owner went. His litter mate owner went to pick them up together. So his litter mate owner he sees, because he plays with Fern all the time. She was over the other night, like could not contain himself.
Gotcha.
Despite sit down Argos, sit down Argos. He just gets possessed by excitement. It really just seems like really what I perceive as just like deep, very genuine excitement for these people. And then so that's the first thing, just the jumping and just like not being able to control himself when, we'll do a treat and he'll, and actually this is kind of similar to when he comes out of, we drop him off at a daycare, couple times a week just to get a break out of that, because everyone's learning from home, and he's in our, he's in the kids' faces at school. Yeah. But he'll jump out of the thing to see me, and again jumps like crazy. And then I have to I say, sit, and then I'll put it down. He'll actually leave it. Like I'll put it down on the ground. He'll leave it. He actually does a pretty good job with that. So he does listen. He just, it's just almost just this impulsive excitement. And then so it's the jumping on people when excited. Mm-hmm. Second thing, we've got neighbors to our left. I don't know what it is, but it's getting to a point where it's kind of getting uncomfortable. Okay. How much he's like barking. I mean, it does sound when he's barking like there's a little bit of a growl. I don't think he's being aggressive. Mm-hmm. But again, like he can't be out there. Like I'm feeling bad for my neighbor. I feel like our neighbors are gonna like call someone, because they the minute they walk out, he's going nuts. And he won't stop. I'll go out there and he'll be in the fence, like barking. And then he's also been like, I don't know, maybe this is common, so excuse my naivete about young dogs, but if there's any food on the counter, he goes after it. We were in the car ride home yesterday. My son had a little chicken sandwich from Culver's. It was sitting on the chair of the seat of the car. Mm-hmm. Argos was very good, quiet, on the ground. The second we weren't paying attention, he went back there and ate the whole sandwich.
Sure.
I mean, he's very smart. I think he's also pretty bright. Wonderful dog. We absolutely love him. We just want him to, be a little more in check. And oh yeah, sorry. Then the other thing that's kind of a concern. My wife takes him to the dog, to the tennis courts, mm-hmm. to run around with Fern, this other dog, and a couple dogs came up, and he went not again. He would not listen to my wife at all, and he doesn't with me either. If I say come, if like dogs are coming and we're running around in an open tennis court, he even if I have a treat, he's just possessed by the dog by the other dogs if he sees them. So that's that's kind of that's uncomfortable. So anyway, those are the big things.
The barking at your neighbor, that's within a fenced yard?
So we have a fence. It's a well, it's a bamboo, one of those bamboo fences. It's not like it's a fence. It is a fenced yard. I mean, there's a chain link fence, and then there's like this bamboo. Um, he can kind of see through it. It's not clear.
Mhm.
I thought maybe that could be something that like he's not able to see them clearly, but he knows they're there. I thought maybe that, but we took it down once and it didn't. Then he was like up on the fence, barking at them.
Sure.
Uh,
Is he only barking at your neighbors, or is he barking at people passing by?
he's only really seems kind of preoccupied in a dramatic fashion with our neighbors to the left. The other neighbors, he barks at them, but it's not like incessant, like nonstop, goes up to the fence and is like, it does seem like he's, a little territorial there.
Mhm.
It seems a little bit more, again, I don't want to say aggressive because I don't think he would ever hurt, he wouldn't attack them, but I think he's just like, he's really charged when they come out there.
Um, is there kids in that yard? Is there a dog in that yard? Is there anything that makes them different from your other neighbor?
Um, no, I mean, they're pretty close. They have like I guess the one thing is that they're pretty close. Like they have a back porch that when you walk down, it's like they come down to the sidewalk and then our fence is like right there.
Hmm.
Whereas the other neighbors, when they come into the yard, they're like on the other side of the
Mhm.
yard.
Okay,
Um,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Okay. So we have a lot of excitement. We have barking in the yard, and then like come when called, essentially.
Yeah, especially when there's some fun action around.
Okay. Anything else about Argos I should know about?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, no, he's been really, I mean, he actually can do, like, we do kind of little mini training with him. Treat was, sit, he can do all the sit and I'll put it in, like I said, I'll put it in front of him. I'll tell him to leave it and he leaves it.
Mhm.
Pretty religiously. Like he'll sit there for about a minute.
Sure.
He won't touch it until I say go. So he can do some minor stuff, but I think that's when there aren't kind of significant distractions.
Right. Um, Before reaching out, did you guys do any research on me and the methods that I use?
Yeah. Yeah. So our neighbors, I don't know if you've worked with Rick Cardis and Milo.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they said Milo is pretty simple. I mean, I don't know Milo super well, but Rick said that it's been the jumping specific. I remember Milo would jump quite a bit.
Mhm.
I remember and then just like he doesn't jump at all. Rick says whatever you're doing is he's like Milo's like a changed dog. So I was
Yeah.
like I got to reach out.
All right. So I'll fill you in on all how that stuff works. But what you're dealing with is not uncommon. It's fairly typical dog behavior.
Yeah.
I'll start with the territorial stuff, which is normal. Okay.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to me that the neighbor that whose sidewalk is right next to your fence is where he's more agitated.
Right.
Okay. Now, dogs are very interesting in the sense that let's say he sees your neighbor walking in the fence right there and he's super like defensive, and you pop him on a leash and you walk him in the front and he sees that same neighbor in the front, probably not going to see anything.
Right.
Okay. Because the that on either side of you, those people either bought the house or rent the house or whatever, right?
Yep.
But for dogs, they just go like, hey, this is our territory and I see you and I'm just letting you know there's a dog here, right? Whether or not he'd follow through with actual like defensiveness is a totally different thing.
Right.
But essentially he's doing his job as a security.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's genetic. It's just a part of, dogs. Like in my opinion, dogs are the best form of security.
Totally.
Even if you got a Chihuahua, they'll bark at like any suspicious sound, right? So he's essentially doing his job. In regards to like, because this, it's funny with people, they're all like, I don't, my dog's not aggressive, but is I'm not going to judge your dog, okay?
Yeah.
But think of it this way: aggression is not a characteristic that a dog is born with or without.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
animals are capable of becoming aggressive.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, are they put in a situation that they feel they need to.
Got it.
Okay,
Yep.
so let's say for Argos here, you could have it for 5 years, not a thing ever happened, and
Yep.
then one day someone gets bit. Okay,
Yep.
and then I come in and I'll ask questions and all that stuff, and I'll go, yeah, that makes sense because he was very agitated, and the person decided to reach over the yard to try to pet him, and then he
Yep.
goes, yo, like, this is our
Yeah.
territory, and he's not doing it to be aggressive. He's doing because he's like, why are you trespassing,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So an aggressive dog is a dog that resorts to aggression like that for like
Yep.
everything.
Yeah.
Touch me, don't come into my house, don't get near my bed, don't get near my food. Like it's very consistent.
Yep.
Uh, you know, and I've had golden retrievers, very sweet, same thing, like they have it for years. And then one day the dog bites someone, and then I got to ask questions. And like, so let's say a common one is like kids, you know, and
Yeah.
then they'll say like, Jesse, we've had this dog for years, grew up with the kids and stuff, and then bit my son in the face, right? And I'll go
Right.
like, well, do you let your son pull at the cheeks and pull at the ears and climb on your dog and stuff? And they're like, yeah, but he's never had a problem with it. I'm like, yeah, it's
Right.
the day he did,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
does it make sense?
Yeah, totally. And actually, I should mention too, that we haven't seen any dramatic change in his behavior as a result of it. But he's a wonderful runner, so I run with him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we were passing a dog, and I should have stopped and walked because when I went past, I was like, oh shoot, I bet that's going to startle the dog,
Mm.
because the dog was sitting and the owner was kind of facing him, saw me coming, so she stood kind of in front of him, and the dog, right when we passed, grabbed onto his back hind leg and was pulling at his leg. It was pretty.
Yeah.
It was pretty. Like I was, it was a pretty dramatic situation.
Sure.
He didn't really shift any behaviors after that. Like we didn't see anything, but anyway, I just feel
Sure. When did
probably
that happen?
good information. It was a couple months ago. We
Okay.
nothing, hasn't been recent. And again, I haven't noticed any change in the.
Yeah. What if you would have seen something? In my opinion, you would have seen it by now. Because whenever I get a dog that's attacked by another dog like that, if it's gonna change, it's immediate.
It happens quick.
It's like overnight. It's like one day the dog was friendly with everybody and friendly with dogs, and the next day they hate dogs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I think you're fine. I think he recovered from it because then that would most likely be an issue that you're trying to deal with. Is like now he's reactive towards dogs and stuff like that.
Right. Yep.
But with what you're telling me, this is nothing out the ordinary in terms
Okay.
of acting and stuff. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
When it comes to the excitement stuff, pretty typical. You get a dog that really likes people, but he just kind of takes it over the top.
Yes.
And then the recall stuff is just obedience. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'll break down how I'd approach this because I don't teach stuff if you're not going to use it.
Got it.
Like I get a feel for what you're needing and wanting. There's stuff that has to happen.
Yep.
So like even like you might say like my dog walks relatively well on a leash. We just need him to come when we call him.
Yep.
But leash walking has to happen before we get to come uncalled. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
And it's interesting. He's good with me on a leash. So actually, why you bring up leash walking, because I think that is probably another area of concern. Like the kid, we got a prong collar for him because he was. The kids couldn't walk him because he was just pulling crazy. And right now, I'd say, depending on the day, he's okay out there. Like if I run him in the morning, he can probably be walked okay. But if he's got energy, if I'm not walking him, or my wife's not walking him, the kids can't too uh, he's just too dismissive of their authority, uh, you know. So
We got it wrong, which is good.
yeah,
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 yeah. So Milo with Rick is trained or is trained on an e-collar.
right,
Are
okay,
you familiar with e-collar?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So generally, not a whole lot, but yeah,
Okay.
you know,
I'll educate you on it.
from Rick how it works a little bit, yeah,
Yeah. So an e-collar, people typically call it like a shock collar.
yeah,
It's not a shock. It's not electricity.
right.
Um, it's a miniaturized TENS unit. So have you ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
No, I
No.
haven't.
So if you like some people, if you go to a chiropractor, if your back is too stiff or too tense,
Yeah.
they'll put these like circles with wires on your back, and it'll
Okay.
move the muscles. Okay.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So if you ever seen like those commercials where it's like, get abs while you watch TV, and you see like the muscles on the stomach twitching, uh,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh, yeah.
TENS unit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's the same technology.
Okay.
So people think that they're electrocuting their dog. I'm like, you're not electrocuting your dog. It's they use this technology on humans. They use a lot on sports rehabilitation therapy.
Sure.
They use it to break up scar tissue on muscle. They use these back pain. So it's just a muscle stimulator.
Yep.
Okay. Now the reason why I use this tool is because right off the bat it gets you off leash control. Okay. So we have three types of primary types of training. There's food based only,
Yep.
and then there's prong or gentle leader. Gentle leader is the one that goes over the mouth and has like a clip on the bottom.
Okay.
And then there's e-collar.
Yeah.
Okay. Positive only is great for puppies under 6 months. It's great for the basic stuff. It's just teaching the concepts. It's like kindergarten stuff for kids. And then gentle leader and prong collar are better. But then when you take the leash off, the dog's like, well, now you can't make me do anything.
Exactly.
Connection,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And e-collar, on or off leash, I'm gonna have control over the dog.
Yes.
Okay?
I like that.
The
Yeah.
other thing is, it doesn't matter the size or the strength of the person trying to walk the dog.
Right.
Okay, so like I had a young lady. She was probably like 90, 100 pounds,
Yep.
and she had a 150-pound Great Dane.
Oh,
Okay?
wow.
And he was dog reactive. So when she'd go out for a walk, he would lunge after dogs and like drag her down the sidewalk.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we fitted him with the prong collar and an e-collar because the prong collar gave her more physical leverage in
Yep.
case like she turned the corner and she saw a dog, like right away she could control him.
Yep.
But the e-collar allowed her at 90 pounds or whatever to control her 150-pound dog. Okay. Because it's the level of the contraction, the power of it isn't contingent on how big the person is. It's all on a dial on the
Right
the
there.
remote.
Yeah.
Okay. So it allows me to close the gap. So like I actually just did a consultation with a couple, like the husband's like 6'2" or something, big guy, and the wife's like 5 foot, right?
Yeah.
And the dog behaves better with the husband because the husband has the capacity to correct the dog correctly on a prong collar, like he has the strength, but the wife doesn't. So the dog behaves better or behaves well with the husband, but doesn't with the wife. You
Yep.
know.
Yep.
So with e-collar, it doesn't matter because if you press the button at 45 and your wife presses the button at 45 or your kid presses the button at 45, it's the same.
Okay.
Okay. So it helps with that stuff too. How old are your children, by the way?
We've 10-year-old, soon to be 11, 7, soon to be 8, and then 5, 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So probably too young to be working with Argos.
Okay.
Typically around 13, 14 is when
Okay.
kids are old enough to get the concepts and stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing would be like children aren't as aware as we are. So
Right.
like Argos could be walking really well with your 11-year-old and then see something and then your child doesn't see what he saw. And then
Right.
Argos goes and then he just takes
Right.
the child down, right?
So in a situation like that, if we're walking him
Mm-hmm.
and he sees something, we see what he sees. Do you do the e-collar
Yes
response?
and no.
Argos, come. You give the e-collar response before, like, is that how that?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So technically, so what we would do is we would teach Argos how to walk in a heel. Okay.
Okay.
So heel is when a dog walks at your side with no pulling, but it's stricter than people think it is.
Right.
Okay. So if I take 5 steps, Argos would take 5 steps. I take 3 steps, Argos takes 3 steps. When I stop, he automatically sits. Okay.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
the level I teach it to. And it
That's
sounds
awesome.
complicated, but it's very easy to teach.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, is if you have that level of focus, the squirrel across the street doesn't matter.
Got it.
That's the approach. However,
Nice.
if
Yeah.
I have a dog who really likes squirrels, it can override the obedience. Okay.
Right.
So then if he's staring at the squirrel and I know his susceptibility to squirrels, yes, you would correct him with the collar and say, like, hey, don't worry about that squirrel right now.
Okay.
Okay.
And then by
So
doing that, he comes back to you, kind of thing.
well, you disengage the brain. Okay, so if he's staring and you tapped him on the collar, he would just keep walking like this. He'd forget about the squirrel.
Ah, cool.
So
Okay.
e-collar can teach dogs to do things, but also to teach them not to do things.
Not to do things. Got it.
Okay, and because that's the difference between behavior and obedience. Obedience is do this, sit down, come, heel, right?
Yep.
Behavior is typically don't do that. Don't jump, don't bark, don't eat food off the counter, don't look at that squirrel across the street.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you can do both with the e-collar, and it's all at the press of a button. Okay.
How would it work? Like if he, so we do have this issue, like, and it's driving everybody nuts with the
Okay.
food, right? We have to put everything on the counter. I mean, it's the other day he figured out how to get into our uh, compost bowl on the counter.
Mhm.
Even with the top on. We've had the top on forever and it's been fine. But then he figured out how to take it off. So now he's going in. So now we got to put the compost in the microwave when we're not using the microwave.
Sure.
So how would the e-collar work in that type in a situation where we're trying to prevent him?
So we probably wouldn't use the e-collar there.
Okay. Got it.
Because it would make you dependent on the e-collar.
I see.
So, do you drive?
Yes.
You go on the expressway?
Yeah.
You go the speed limit?
Generally, yeah.
Most people don't.
Right.
Yeah. When you see a squad car, what happens?
Yeah, I put the brakes, hit the
You
brakes.
slow down, right? You go speed limit because now there's threat of consequence.
Yeah.
But then once we pass up that squad car,
We take
it
off.
up. So think of the e-collar as a cop on a collar. When it's present, Argos will behave well or listen better. But when it's not present, he's going to push the boundaries. Okay, that's called opportunistic behavior. So going back to when he ate the chicken sandwich or whatever,
Right.
he was good, but then when no one was paying attention to him, he
Yeah.
saw the opportunity, he
Right.
took it.
Okay.
Right, that's opportunistic behavior.
Got it.
So it's nothing good or bad. It's just how it is. It's like with kids, right? You tell them, like, hey, you can't watch TV, but then if you have to go do something and leave
Right.
the room, what's to stop
Turn
them
the
from
TV.
watching the TV?
Right.
So what we do is I teach you other methods of correction.
Okay.
So for Argos, if he did something to another dog that they disagreed with, do you know how they would correct him?
You mean another?
Yeah, let's say Argos jumped on another dog, right? And that dog did not like it. What would that dog do to correct Argos?
Oh, he would probably bark or growl at him or something. I don't know. Maybe.
I think you're gonna make a biting motion.
Yeah.
Bite.
Yeah.
Bark and growl is kind of like the verbal warning, like, hey, don't do that.
Right.
But nipping and biting is the reinforcer.
Got it.
Right? Like if Argos jumped, the dog growls and goes, hey, I'll bite you.
Right.
He jumps again, the dog goes, all right, boom. Right? I warned you. So dogs are physical animals.
Yep.
So in order to stop him from doing something, there has to be a physical consequence. Okay. So if you said no, Argos, and he looks at you and he might walk away, but then 5 minutes later, he's back at the compost again. Right. Because there was no follow through.
Right.
Okay. So I was raised old school. I was spanked.
Yeah.
So like if my mom, when my mom said, don't do that in the beginning, it just meant don't do that. Right. and then it got spanked.
Right.
Now, don't do that had a totally different meaning. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Right.
So it's the same thing for dogs.
Yeah.
Is if I say don't do that, and he's like, or what? I don't know, right? You have to follow through.
Yeah.
And that, so like e-collar again does both. But in this case, I'd give you other means, because otherwise when he doesn't have the collar in the house, he's still going to look for the compost and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is I teach you other methods of correcting them to deter the behavior. And if you're consistent and you follow through, he's going to go, well, you know what? Going for the compost isn't worth it anymore. It's not worth the consequence.
Right.
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 So it's like running a red light, like it's $100 ticket or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And imagine if it was like $1,000 ticket,
Right.
right? Like people wouldn't try to speed past that yellow light anymore.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Right? Because the consequence is so much higher for just a small behavior.
Right.
But the thing with humans is we would argue that, like, oh, it's just a red light, like why do I gotta pay $1,000? But if they had extreme consequences for things like that, we would do them far
Sure.
less, right?
Yep.
So it's the same thing for dogs. Unfortunately, we cannot communicate with them and say, like, hey, Argos, you can't dig in the compost, like, don't do that, right? Like you could with a child.
Right.
You can't tell him, like, hey, if you do this, I'm going to spank you later, because he's not like a child that can process that and think futuristically.
Right.
He's all about being provided consequence at the moment. Okay. So
Okay.
this is all stuff that I teach you. It's essentially me teaching you how to like spank your dog. So
Yeah. Sure.
Which
yeah, no. So then with the e-collar, will so eventually then the idea, of course, is that he won't need it, right? Is that, I mean, at what point would he not have, or do we keep it on him when he's outside at all times, kind of thing?
have it when you need it, right? Because remember, cop on a collar.
Right.
So if you take him out, let's say 2 years from now, and you're like, hey, it's been 2 years, and you take him out, and all of a sudden, like, I was like, oh, that cop's not here. Right. And again, it has nothing to do with the training. It's just opportunistic behavior. Okay. And the other thing is you can't account for life.
Right.
Dogs do dumb things. Their logic is not the same as our logic. So like, let's say you're out the park, Argos is doing great, but someone blows up a firework.
Right.
And it spooks him.
No, hey, no.
Right.
No. That's the other thing. Bark, he'll just be barking him out.
Like a random bark.
Well, I think he wants probably to go somewhere. I think I need to get him to the. Let me give me one second, because he may just keep barking at. Yeah. That's pretty normal too, right? I mean, is that something we train? I mean, if I didn't want him to bark right now,
yeah, you just correct him.
We just say no bark. I mean,
Well, I would just correct them, because I'm like, I don't want you to bark.
You mean with the
collar or the method of correction that I show you?
I see. Okay. All right. Got it. All right. Yeah, that's good. No, this will be super helpful. All right, come, 1 second. Come on, Argos. You go outside? Go. All right. Sorry about that.
No problem. So, for behavior like that, because again, it's just don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And it's not mean to correct your dog, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Because another dog, like, dogs don't think that way. So like Argos could play with a bunch of dogs that he doesn't know. And if he gets out of line, they'll just correct them. They don't care that it's the first time they've met him. They're just like, yo, we don't do that. And then they would just bite him. Humans put too much thought into this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we start to get too, I don't want to,
Yeah. And that's why dogs have problems.
Got it. Interesting.
Okay? Like if all the sweet stuff and the positive and the food and the treats and the affection worked, I wouldn't be here.
Right. Hey, I'm with you, man. I mean, you know, as far as my perspective, you know, he's an animal after all. I love him to pieces, but
Yeah.
you know,
And it just, I mean, it's like with kids, like, there has to be a balance of like, yeah, positive, but also like if you get out of line, there's a kind of,
right?
right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So the way I would approach this is, it sounds like you're in in my 6 class program. Okay.
Okay.
So
Yep.
I have 3, 6, 9, and 12 week programs, one day a
Okay.
week to an hour. And
Sorry.
on
Was it how many? What's an hour long each
yeah,
class? Got it.
1 hour once a week.
Got it. Okay.
So
Cool.
in Argos's case here, uh, we would cover leash walking first,
Yep.
because that has to happen. That's what teaches Argos how e-collar works. Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Also, we tend to walk our dogs multiple times a day, at least 3 times a day,
Yep.
is the average for people.
Yep.
It also helps you do something regularly to practice how the e-collar works. Okay.
Yep.
That's 2 classes. The third class, we most likely jump into recall or come called,
Okay.
because it takes the longest to teach.
Okay.
Okay, so heel is the fastest because most people walk their dogs multiple times a day. Recall is the longest because it requires you to go somewhere. Okay, you
Okay.
got to go to the park. You got to have distractions like squirrels and dogs and
Yeah.
people to call Argos from to build realistic reliability. Okay,
Right.
recall is typically 2 classes. That leaves classes 5 and 6. Okay,
Okay. Yep.
so, and we can also like alter it. Like if you need to cover something like aside from heel, like if it's like, hey, we really got to get this like barking down or whatever,
Yeah.
we would cover that. Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Otherwise, the jumping on people and correcting behavior is kind of like a class, because it's me essentially showing you or educating you on how to correctly correct your dog for behaviors you don't want.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
It's like I'm teaching you how to spank your kid, kind of. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that'd be helpful too, because I've read stuff, you know, and I think we also just need to almost. So I've tried, move them into the other room, or tell them no, or distract him with a treat, like. No, Argos, you'll like the treat more than you want to jump on my mom. Like,
Right, right, right.
so, and I think if we could just stick to something every time, it's clear, it's straightforward,
Correct.
Yeah,
Because putting them in a different room, dogs don't reflect.
right,
They're not like humans. Like you could send a
right,
child to a room like, hey,
right.
this
Time
dog
out.
exactly right, and they can reflect on that.
Right.
Dogs do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and if jumping on, mom is more rewarding than the treat in your hand, he's an opt for that as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be 2 classes on heel, 2 classes on recall, a class on correcting his behavior,
Yep.
which would also cover like the fence barking and stuff.
Yeah. Got it.
And then a 6th class can be a variable, like it could be a review of things. Maybe you didn't understand something quite clearly, uh,
Sure.
or we could also cover what we call place command, which is go here, don't move. So like you guys are eating dinner, or like the kids, they're trying to do their work and stuff, and like Argos, like go over here and don't move for the next 3 hours.
That's awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's easy to teach, but you have to do, of course, the
Have to keep
homework
doing
in
it.
order
Yeah.
to build that kind of reliability.
Got
Okay,
it. All
if you
right.
did 9 and 12 week classes, it's essentially we're teaching more stuff. Like you have more control over Argos.
Yeah.
I'm simplifying it, and I'm going, okay, this is the bare bones of what you need for what you're telling me.
Okay.
Okay. And if you're like, hey, we want no, we want more control, then you just cover more stuff. Okay.
And then maybe this is my just you know, idealized vision of having him, because he's a wonderfully sweet, playful, like and seemingly really. I mean, I think all dogs are smart on some level, but he definitely like um he'll respond. He's been an awesome dog.
Right.
Aside from he's just things I don't want to have happen anymore. Like
Sure.
uh, so eventually, like would he be? I mean, again, I wouldn't have him off leash in like a huge public space, but like if we're out in the country and he, is this something like after with the come when you call? like would we be guaranteed, like let's say we're in Michigan or something and there's a deer, and which happened at one point not long ago. He saw a deer in the distance and was like, he would have taken off and probably never returned. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe not have returned. I don't know, but like with the is that pretty guaranteed? Like not guaranteed, but is it pretty? Um, is the it, would should we feel confident that over time we could be kind of in an open space and he would respond to us pretty consistently with fidelity, or is that
Yes,
okay?
but that's contingent on how much work did you put into it,
Got it.
right?
Yeah.
And there's always a variable of like, so like let's say he's got good prey drive, and we've never worked around deer before, right? We've worked around all the city stuff, squirrels, rabbits, and stuff, and
Right.
he's great, but we've never done deer before.
Right.
Is I always tell people when you go into a new environment and you know something like that would be a possibility,
Yeah.
is we always go back a step in the training
Ah.
where we keep them on a long leash.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's like a 30-foot leash.
Yep. That's what we was on. I thought he was going to rip the thing out of the ground because he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that in case Argos bypasses the collar, right?
Right.
We can still make him return because of the leash,
Yeah.
but now we have something else to work on.
Yeah.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
it's super rare, but I've had a couple of dogs throughout my career that their prey drive was just off the charts, you know, and the owner. So ideally, we train the dog and they have impulse control, and he doesn't do that. He's like,
Right.
"Oh, there's a deer," but it doesn't matter
No,
because
I'm good.
I don't have
I'm
permission to do that, right? But we get other dogs that are just like hunters, you know,
yeah.
and the owners have to manage them more. It's all it means. They have to
Got it.
be more aware of things and like kind of be proactive. Like, nope, don't worry about that deer.
Yep.
Whereas other dogs will just naturally just like ignore them because of the discipline they've received.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I always tell everybody, if you're going to a new environment, always take a step back and practice things there. So the dog goes, oh, okay, like this also applies to deer,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And then you have more of a as close to guaranteed as you can get with the
Yeah.
remote collar. Okay. Because if he takes off, it's a 1 mile range, depending. Yeah, definitely a 1 mile range for the one I'm going to recommend for him.
Yeah.
It's the highest powered collar. So it's just a matter of, are you willing to go up there on the power to override his prey drive to make him return?
Yeah.
Because people feel bad too.
Yeah.
Where they're
Sure.
like, oh, like, Jesse, like, actually, this happened to a client like 2 days ago. She was at the dog park. Her dog was getting too intense with the play, and he was ignoring her, and she had to go to like 85, and he yelped and ran right back to her, right?
Oh.
So then she said that it took her like 4 hours to get over.
How yeah, the
So,
impact. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And I was like, but like,
He
you
came back.
know
Yeah.
that your dog would have
Right.
gotten like escalated, and it would have been something bad,
Right.
right? Because it's a pit mix. He's friendly, but he just gets a
Sure.
little bit too much. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then other people would misread your dog,
Right.
right? So I'm
Right.
like,
You could
like
turn it
don't
into
feel
something.
guilty,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Sure.
But I mean, she did it. She just felt guilty about it.
Got it.
So, but you like even so, yes, you do your homework, you practice.
Yeah.
It gets you the highest level of reliability, and also in case he decides to like not going to do it, you have a means of making him do it.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is why I use this tool.
Right.
Um,
And just to clarify, so the because I just so I understand the e-collar, and this all sounds great. We're in the backyard,
uh-huh,
sitting on the laying down on the grass, totally calm. Sees a deer,
mhm.
starts going after the deer, like possessed by the deer. You'd hit the button,
Mhm.
and he would feel it, and he would come right back. In theory.
Yes and no. So the reason why I say yes and no is because when you correct him for the behavior, I don't care that he comes back to me. I care that he doesn't chase the deer. Does that make sense? So like he could sit there and look at the deer. I don't care.
Right.
But don't think about chasing it.
Right.
Okay. But chances are, if you correct him and you have to go higher, he would probably, as precaution, return to you because he's thinking that's why it happened. When really I corrected him because I didn't want him to chase the deer.
Ah, okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ideally, so my dogs, if my dogs are off leash, you'll see them like running around and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And if they see a squirrel and I tap the collar, my dog would stop staring at the squirrel but continue sniffing the ground and stuff. So my dog knows that tap didn't mean come to me. It meant don't think about
don't pay attention to that anymore.
Yeah.
That's what the elect whatever, not it's
stim.
Whatever, what?
I call it stim.
Stim. That's just saying, I see you seeing something over there. Stop looking at that. Mm-hmm. Don't come, but I'm correcting you. I'm bringing your attention back to what it was before you thought. Okay.
Yep. That's none of your business.
Kind
of like kids.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like you're walking, they see the playground, like, oh, I want to, but nope, we're not doing that right now. We're going to the store.
Got it.
Same thing for dogs.
Cool.
Okay. And I educate, and when you start it, it makes more sense because right now you're trying to picture this stuff.
Yeah, like how does it?
Heard of before. But when you start it, it makes a lot of sense.
Got it.
Okay. Because the way I train is just logic based. You know. Yeah. So most people, when they do e-collar, or most trainers, they talk about low-level e-collar. Our collars go 0 to 127 in increments of 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to 127. So we can really fine-tune it. And you'll hear of people like trainers, their dog is trained on like 8 out of 127. Okay. Which in my book is super rare for the average dog owner. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're dog trainers. I've simplified it because people get too caught up with that. They're like, oh man, like I'm at 25. I'm like, yeah, keep going. I'm like, if your dog's not listening, keep going. Because that's the whole point. Right. Is it's as low as possible, but as high as needed.
Got it.
Okay. Because if I'm at 60 and he's just blowing off, going after the deer, and I'm like, oh, what do I do now? Yeah, you got 67 more levels.
Yeah.
You know, like override the situation.
Right.
So it's very much logic based, and the biggest problem that I have is the owner.
Yeah.
Okay. Is they feel bad, or they want to give the dog the opportunity to be a good dog. Okay. So now the dog gets gray area.
Right.
And actually, I just talked about this with Rick.
Yeah.
In the last session, I forgot how he put it. He's like, I know you've told me several times, Jess. He's like, but I got a soft spot for Milo.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard for him
to
go to that level, and I get it. You know, he loves his dog. Rick's a good guy.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But then he's like, I get it though. He's like, I understand what you're saying, and it's every time because I think you're as high as like 70 for Milo, to get him to stay put on the bed. And then I think Rick was operating like at 45, and he wasn't listening. Yeah. I'm like, that's why he wasn't listening, because you're 25 levels too short.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's funny because you read stuff, and most of the stuff out there is, which I get, like, positive reinforcement. Your dog's inherently good, like which I don't disagree with, but they also are going to be, they're impulsive. They're animals.
Yeah. So, well, I just had a consultation before you, and the gentleman was like, oh, like you can see he wants to please us. So I was like, then why am I here?
Yeah.
Because if your dog wanted to please you, he would be doing everything you said.
Right.
And then he was like, oh shit, like I didn't think about it that way. Right. Like dogs are self-serving.
Right.
They don't understand, like, like a kid can be like, you know what, I'm going to get straight A's. I'm going to make my parents proud. Dogs don't do that.
No. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it's pretty straightforward. It's common sense. I train for life.
Yeah.
If you want to take your dog out in the country where there's going to be animals, he's going to be off leash and stuff, like that's what I train for.
Cool.
Okay. So, questions about any of that stuff?
You mean as far in terms of like when we're out? Specific
general, just any questions about anything?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm really, so in the way I'm looking at it too, so it sounds like the the e-collar with the barking with the neighbor isn't really going to be, is probably not a great idea because we want him to bark.
So what you can
We
do,
want him to bark at like people coming close to the yard,
yeah,
and so we don't want him to be like, no, don't pay attention to that.
yeah.
Go
So
back to what you're doing,
you can do a couple of things. One, it's Argos barks until you tell him to quiet, right? It's like maybe you hear him barking, you go out and check it out, and it's the neighbor, and you're like, okay, you don't need to bark at the neighbor. Argos quiet, and then you would correct them with the collar, because now you're saying I've acknowledged what you're barking at, and there's no need to bark at it anymore, right? So it's like an off switch. Or you can do what you're saying, like, no, like it's security, right? Like as long as they mind that they don't reach over the yard or anything like that, and he's just barking at them, we're good,
yeah.
you know.
So you would use the e-collar with him, or you would would the e-collar be worthwhile with our neighbor barking because
if you want it to be,
yeah, no, absolutely.
okay? If you want it, if you want control over the barking, we can control it without eliminating it. Okay,
Right.
we can really fine tune it. But
I see.
if your preference is like, nah, Jesse, like I like my dog barking, I go, okay, cool, then we don't do anything about it.
Right.
You know, because everybody has their own preference.
Right.
I get some people who live on the 5th floor and they're like, Jesse, we don't need our dog to bark out the window because who's going to come in here? Right. But my clients live on the 1st floor, and I get clients like, Jesse, it's a lot of families and kids and dogs. We don't want the dog barking at that, but we want the dog to still bark at people coming into the yard. We can do that.
Got it. Okay.
It just takes consistency.
Yeah.
It takes work, but the dog will learn, like, okay, I don't bark at moms with kids or dogs, but I still bark at the Amazon guy coming into the yard, right? Because he's coming onto the property.
Absolutely. We don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and also, let's say I have a client that wants to eliminate all barking. If someone broke a window, the dog would still bark. Okay. If there was still someone like fiddling with the doorknob, the dog would still bark, because it's completely out of context. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So dogs are super smart. Like we can really, fine tune things. It's just whatever the owner wants, and they just have to be consistent about what they're doing.
Got it.
Okay. But otherwise, he's doing his job as a security dog.
Yeah.
I don't see a problem with it.
Right.
Other questions?
No, I think so. So do we do this? I mean, would the trainings be in like I know Rick has been going on Sundays or something like that. He mentioned, like, how does all that?
So Rick started like January, February. So it was still like winter time and snowing and stuff.
Yep.
So we were training my facility at Logan Square.
Okay. Yeah.
But so last year, so I used to do home to home.
Okay.
Then COVID happened.
Right.
And then people are like, we don't want you in our home. So I'm like, all right. I was like, well, how about we train at Oz Park? It's distracting. There's people, dogs, rollerbladers, skateboarders, baseball games, right?
Yeah.
So we're training outside. It's very realistic. It's very distracting. But then once winter hits, we move to my facility.
Got it.
But now in probably the next week or two, we're going to be transitioned back to Oz.
Okay.
And train outside when the weather is nice and good. And then when it's raining, we'll just train in my facility.
Okay.
If you're wanting in-home training, I do still do in-home. It's just at a higher rate now.
Okay.
Since everybody travels to me leaving to go somewhere and then come back is more out. It takes more time out of my day.
Yeah. No, I think as long as I know, it sounds like what you're going to kind of, the part of the lessons will be what I can take home and then show the kids, show my wife, and we can practice here once I know kind of the strategy that you use. There's not really anything. I wouldn't see a reason for you to have to come here to do anything.
It's really common sense. So like, let's say you did end up training my facility for whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
There's dogs and stuff, and it's inside, so it's not as distracting. And let's say Argos's number is like 25.
Yeah.
And then you go home and he's not listening to 25. Well, then what do we do?
Right.
Go up. right? That's the part. That's always the part that people struggle with.
Right.
You know, because they're like, well, what if I screw my dog up? E-collar actually gives people the biggest gray area to screw up,
Right.
and not screw up their dog.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, it would just in terms of like transferring from other environments, it's pretty straightforward. It's just you have to be willing to go there.
Got it. And then how do you know, like, does it work for all dogs? I mean, are there some dogs for whom
all dogs that I've trained over 6 months are on e-collar.
Got it.
Okay. Now, someone would argue like, "Well, this dog's fearful. Like, I wouldn't train an e-collar on a fearful dog." I'm like, I absolutely would, because that's the dog that's going to run away.
Right.
Right. That's the dog that when they hear something is going to book it. Right. Yeah. Or like dogs that are really anxious. It's the same thing. You know, when I get dogs that have inherent behavior issues, I go, those are absolutely the dogs that need it, because they're the ones that freak out the most when something happens.
Right.
You know, and e-collar is the only tool that can potentially override their stress levels and get them to comply. You know, so like, and this happened with Rick too, where Milo was kind of shutting down and not wanting to move. And I was like, it looks bad. And I was telling Rick, I'm like, I know this looks bad, but trust me, you want to work him through it, because now Milo is learning, if I don't like something, shutting down isn't going to help me.
Right.
Doing or performing the behavior is going to cause everything to go away. So he's learning the only way is compliance.
Right.
You know, which sounds bad, you know, because people are like, oh, look at the dog. I'm like, yeah, but if I stop, now the dog goes, I don't have to do it.
Right.
And then the day that he takes off and Rick's like, hey, Milo, come back. He's like, I don't have to do it because I didn't have to do the other thing.
Right.
You know, we have to think about it that way. You know,
Yep.
I don't want to hurt the dog. If I was hurting dogs or whatever, like I wouldn't have a successful.
No, for sure. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But yeah, you know, we'll see some stuff. I'll coach you through it. So also, you do everything. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
I coach you, I teach you, but you're doing everything. I don't touch the dog anymore.
Okay. All right. No, that's awesome. And what's the rate? Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, you're good.
And then, so I saw online, so this would be like an hour once a week, and then what's the rate for the 6 week?
I believe the 6 week off the top of my head is $925.
Okay.
And then you would get the 135 credit from your
from this
consultation.
Okay.
And then the collar he would need, you purchase that on your own. You can get them on Amazon.
Okay.
The one he would need is the same one that Milo was on. It's the Doctra Black Edition.
Let me just get that noted here.
Yeah, and Maria will send you this as well.
Okay, great.
But it's the Doctra, Dogtra.
Dogtra.
Black Edition.
Doctra Black Edition. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, and then are there, I guess I'd work out like in terms of when we'd start, when the
Maria.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, because my calendar is constantly changing.
Got it.
How soon you can start just depends on your availability. She'll get that all squared away.
Okay, cool.
But if it's not for a couple of weeks, don't worry about it, just because by that point I'll probably be back at Oz training. Gotcha. So that, in my opinion, that's the best way to train is outside when everything's going on, you know?
Yep.
And I guess the only last thing would be, you know, we are recording everything now. Yeah. I know with your wife and
yeah, she did. That's okay.
Yeah. Is we've had people ask, and because of COVID, we started doing this.
Yeah.
But it would be unfair to say like, okay, well, we won't do it for you, because we've had people that asked and we said no, and they were like, okay, and then they just did training and were recorded. Does that make sense?
No. So say it again.
So like, let's say, because we've had people ask and say like, hey, we don't want to be recorded.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I say, this is what we do with everybody, right? Yeah. It would be unfair to change it up now. So it's like, we made the decision, we're committed. Yeah. Plus I talked to my lawyer about it too, and she was like, yeah, she's like, if you change it up, it's gonna make it really weird. And open me up to like lawsuits and stuff, because we had that actually happen where someone tried to sue us. But I was like, I got you on video saying, like, I was like, we're going to record. And they're like, we don't want to be recorded. And I'm like, well, you can leave then, because that's just how I operate now. And they stayed, and then they tried to sue us.
You afterwards for recording?
Yeah. And then they tried to sue me afterwards. And I was like, I got you. I was like, I gave you the option to leave, So I talked to my lawyer. My lawyer was like, don't worry about it, whatever. It doesn't sound like they have a case. They're just trying to scare you.
Yeah.
But yeah, just as a heads up.
What was sorry, you said because of COVID you had to start recording? Is that the
Yeah, because before I would work with the dog in front of you, and then I would coach you through it, right?
Okay.
But with COVID, it's all verbal instruction. So like it's so much information that people forget stuff.
So then
right. So it's kind of it's if you ever forget something, you just go back to your video, right?
Nice.
Or like, let's say, somebody can't make it to training, they just watch the video. But for us, it's also what's the word? Like marketing. Like it just shows people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to
work.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So otherwise, this is pretty straightforward. I think a pretty standard case in my opinion.
Got it.
Cool. And then Maria will get in contact with you.
What's that?
I said Maria will get in contact with you and like square all stuff away.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and then and then I would just need to come, and then like you said, my wife could just watch the video. Like if the kids and my wife could watch the videos. Would you? I was going to ask that. Is it okay if the kids use once they're?
I would wait till they're older.
Okay. All right.
Because remember earlier I mentioned like they're not going to have the awareness that you have. Right. So like if he's like, let's say they're walking Argos and he sees a deer, their response time to correct him is not going to be like your response time. And then there he goes. Right. So I would just keep it to the adults. Maybe the 11-year-old, but I would wait till 13, 14-ish.
And then does he keep that? We just would put the collar on when we go out, right? Or does he keep that?
That's when you need it.
Okay.
So like if you're having a guest come over and he gets really excited with guests, you can put it on.
Got it.
Okay. And then once he chills out, you can take it off.
Got it.
Or you leave it on while the guest is there if he's like controlling himself. So
sure.
On an as-need basis.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. All right, Jesse. Great. Well, I'll be in touch with Maria, and we'll see you soon.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Yep.
Bye-bye.